You can still buy a real house in America for prices that make your jaws drop. Not a dollhouse, not a needs total gut wreck, real solid houses. And almost no one's talking about it. As we tour these 25 towns, you'll think, how is this possible? But here's the dozen knives twist. Every one of these places has a drip of weird, a price you can't believe, and a cost you'll live with daily. By the end, you'll either be Googling flights to fly into one of these towns or shaking your head at how low real estate can go. 10. Grenada, Mississippi. Picture this. You're cruising down Highway 51, the air thick with southern humidity, and you roll into Grenada, Mississippi. On the surface, it looks like a quiet small town. Fried catfish joints, a handful of antique stores, a lake where people fish all day like it's still 1973. But underneath, Grenada is a strange cocktail of hope, hardship, and history that almost no one outside the South talks about. Here's the wild part. Grenada sits in the middle of the Mississippi Delta, one of the poorest regions in America. Median household income? Just under $39,000, well below the national average. And yet, people stay. Why? Because Grenada offers something that big cities can't: dirt cheap housing. You can find a 3-bedroom house here for under $70,000. The kind of price tag that sounds like a typo if you're scrolling Zillow from New York or LA. But cheap homes come with a story. Grenada has been scarred by decades of economic stagnation. Once upon a time, the local textile mills and factories gave people stable blue-collar jobs. By the early 2000s, most of those plants had shut down. Entire neighborhoods that once thrived with workers, paychecks turned into hollowed-out shells. Drive down certain streets today, and you'll see boarded-up storefronts that feel like time capsules. And then there's the darker history. Back in 1966, Grenada was the site of one of the ugliest clashes of the civil rights movement. Hundreds of black children tried to integrate local schools, and mobs of angry white residents, some armed with chains and baseball bats, fought to keep segregation alive. It was brutal. Even Martin Luther King Jr. himself came to Grenada to march. For locals, those scars didn't just vanish, they're baked into the soil. Fast forward to today, and Grenada is a paradox. On one hand, you've got Lake Grenada, a massive reservoir that draws boaters, campers, and even national fishing tournaments. On weekends, people come from Memphis and Jackson to escape the chaos and just vibe with the water. 9. McAllen, Texas. Picture this. You're standing in a city where tacos are a food group. The sun feels like it's been turned up to broil, and houses cost less than some people's used cars. Welcome to McAllen, Texas, the place where affordability and contradictions collide. On the surface, McAllen looks like the dream. The median home price? About $200,000, nearly half the national average. People joke online that you can get a 3-bedroom here for the price of a broom closet in Austin. And it's not just cheap housing. Groceries, utilities, and even medical care cost less than almost anywhere else in the U.S. That's why the city has quietly become a retirement magnet, especially for folks who want sunshine without the Florida price tag. But here's where it gets interesting. Despite all that affordability, McAllen has made headlines for something much darker. It's been ranked one of the poorest metro areas in the country. According to Census Bureau data, more than 25% of residents live below the poverty line. Imagine this, a place where you can buy a house for cheap, but so many people still can't afford one. How does that even work? A Redditor once described McAllen as the cheapest place in Texas to live, but you'll also need to bring your own job with you. And they're not wrong. The local economy is heavily dependent on retail, agriculture, and healthcare. While those industries keep the city afloat, they don't exactly pay Silicon Valley wages. So unless you're remote working on a tech salary, life in McAllen is more stretching every dollar than living large. And then there's the geography factor. McAllen sits right on the border with Mexico, and that brings both perks and problems. On the plus side, you get incredible cross-cultural food, vibrant markets, and a community where Spanish and English flow together seamlessly. On the downside, the city has battled with issues tied to cross-border crime, though locals are quick to point out that the media often blows it way out of proportion. Yet here's the twist. People still keep moving here. Why? Because McAllen has one secret weapon: quality of life. Crime rates are lower than big city Texas neighbors like Houston. Traffic is practically non-existent, and the cost of living is unbeatable. The city even has one of the nation's top-ranked medical centers, which is why retirees love it. 8. Detroit, Michigan. Picture this. You're driving through a neighborhood where half the homes look like they've been frozen in time since the 1950s. Shiny bricks, big porches, wide streets. And then, 2 blocks later, you stumble across an entire row of abandoned houses with weeds taller than the stop signs. That's Detroit. A city of contrasts where you can snag a house for less than the price of an iPhone. But you'll also need to ask yourself, am I ready to live in a place where my neighbors might be raccoons? In 2013, Detroit filed the largest municipal bankruptcy in U.S. history, $18 billion in debt. This wasn't just a financial hiccup. This was the moment the world started calling Detroit a failed city. Entire neighborhoods were left without streetlights. Police response times averaged an hour, and almost a quarter of the population just left. Imagine being one of the people still hanging on, watching your block empty out one moving van at a time. But here's the kicker. The collapse created one of the weirdest real estate markets in America. At one point, you could literally buy a house in Detroit for $1. Yes, $1. The catch? You had to promise to fix it up, live there, and pay the back taxes, which often cost more than the house itself. Reddit threads about it are full of people saying things like, "I bought a house for less than my rent deposit. Then the city billed me $5,000 for a new sewer line." Yet, Detroit isn't just doom and gloom. In recent years, something wild has been happening. Gentrification at lightning speed. Billionaires like Dan Gilbert, yep, the Quicken Loans guy, poured money into the downtown area. Suddenly, you've got trendy coffee shops, startup incubators, and loft apartments popping up in a place where abandoned factories used to sit. The median home price in Detroit hit about $98,000 in 2024, still dirt cheap compared to the national average of $420,000, but way higher than the days of $1 homes. Here's the open loop. Detroit has become this real-life experiment. 7. Youngstown, Ohio. Picture this. It's 1977, a chilly September day, and thousands of steel workers in Youngstown show up to the mill like they have every morning for years. Only this time, something's different. By the end of the day, the machines stop, the gates lock, and 5,000 people are out of work, just like that. Locals still call it Black Monday, and in many ways, it was the day Youngstown's heart got ripped out. For decades, Youngstown wasn't just a city, it was the backbone of America's steel industry. Families lived well, downtown was buzzing, and people actually bought 2 cars for the driveway, instead of wondering if they'd ever afford one. But after the steel collapse, the city never fully recovered. To this day, nearly half a century later, Youngstown still carries the scars. The population? Down from 170,000 in 1930 to under 60,000 today. That's not a typo. The city literally lost 2/3 of its people. Entire neighborhoods sit empty, with trees growing through the floors of abandoned houses. And the median home price? Around $50,000. Some houses list for less than a used Honda Civic. Reddit threads are filled with posts like, "You can buy a house in Youngstown for $10,000, but you might not want to live in it." But here's the twist. While outsiders mock it, there's a quiet fight happening on the ground. Youngstown State University is expanding. Artists are moving into those cheap buildings and turning them into studios. Even the city government has shifted from trying to regrow population to what they call right-sizing the city. Basically admitting, we're smaller now, let's make the best of it. Still, the shadow of crime and poverty looms. Youngstown consistently ranks among the most dangerous cities in America per capita. But the real question is, can cities like Youngstown reinvent themselves in a world where the jobs that built them aren't coming back? To answer that, we've got to look at another Rust Belt town that faced the same nightmare, but took a completely different path. 6. Covington, Kentucky. Picture this. You're standing on the John A. Roebling suspension bridge, the one that looks suspiciously like a baby cousin of the Brooklyn Bridge, because, fun fact, the same guy designed both. You're staring across the Ohio River at Cincinnati's gleaming skyline. But your wallet? It's breathing a sigh of relief because you didn't have to sell a kidney just to live nearby. Covington is one of those cities where history oozes out of the red brick buildings. Back in the late 1800s, this was bourbon and steamboat country. Today, it's a patchwork quilt of old German breweries, shotgun houses, and art galleries trying to out-hipster Brooklyn. Except you can actually afford rent here. Average home prices? Around $175,000 to $190,000 as of 2025, which is almost half of Cincinnati's across the river. One Redditor summed it up best. "I work in Cincy, live in Covington, and my commute is shorter than my Chipotle line." But here's where it gets interesting. Covington isn't just a budget-friendly bedroom community. It's also one of the most diverse, small cities in Kentucky. Roughly 30% of residents identify as a racial or ethnic minority, a big deal in a state that's nearly 85% white. That blend has created a food scene way more exciting than you'd expect from a cheap town list. Authentic tacos on Madison Avenue, mom-and-pop Indian curry houses tucked into old row homes, and, of course, bourbon bars on every corner that would make your uncle question his life choices. Still, Covington isn't without its challenges. Poverty rates hover around 20%, almost double the national average. Crime has been a persistent headline grabber too, with property crime rates about 50% higher than the U.S. average. Locals will tell you the city has its rougher blocks, the kind where you probably don't want to leave your car unlocked overnight. But this duality, affordable charm mixed with gritty reality, is what makes Covington feel raw and alive, not like a sterile suburb. And here's the kicker. Covington is in the middle of a multi-million-dollar riverfront redevelopment that promises luxury condos, office towers, and green parks. Which raises the question, is this about to become another case of gentrification where the very affordability that put it on lists like this disappears within a decade? Some say yes. Others argue Covington is too scrappy to lose its identity that fast. 5. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, select zones. Picture this. You're standing on a hill overlooking Pittsburgh's skyline, the sun dipping behind the Allegheny Mountains. The city sprawls beneath you, a tapestry of neighborhoods, each with its own story. In the distance, the iconic Three Rivers converge, their waters reflecting the golden hues of the setting sun. But as you take in the view, a thought lingers. What if you could own a piece of this city? In 2025, Pittsburgh's housing market presents a paradox. On one hand, the median sale price of homes hovers around $263, $250, a figure that seems almost too good to be true for a city of its size and history. Redfin reported that, on the other hand, the affordability index tells a different story. For married couples, the unaffordability rate has surged to 34.5%, up from 18.18% the previous year. For non-family households, the figure is a staggering 70.9% according to the Pittsburgh City paper. So what's going on? How can prices be low, yet affordability be a growing concern? Pittsburgh's charm lies in its diverse neighborhoods, each offering a unique blend of history, culture, and potential. Lawrenceville. Once a gritty industrial area, Lawrenceville has transformed into a vibrant arts district. With its tree-lined streets and eclectic mix of galleries and boutiques, it's a hotspot for young professionals. However, the influx of new residents has driven up property values, making it less accessible for first-time buyers. Homewood. Known for its rich African-American heritage, Homewood is undergoing revitalization efforts. New developments like the Pittsburgh Scholar House offer affordable housing options, but challenges remain in ensuring these improvements benefit long-term residents. North Braddock. This former steel town is experiencing a slow but steady resurgence. Housing prices are among the lowest in the Pittsburgh metro area, making it an attractive option for investors and those willing to take on renovation projects. Despite the seemingly low home prices, many Pittsburgh residents find homeownership out of reach. The rising unaffordability rates are attributed to several factors: stagnant wages, While housing prices have remained relatively low, wages have not kept pace, making it difficult for many to save for a down payment. Gentrification. As neighborhoods like Lawrenceville and East Liberty gentrify, long-time residents are being priced out, leading to displacement and increased demand in other areas. Limited housing inventory. The number of available homes has not kept up with demand, leading to bidding wars and homes selling above asking price, further exacerbating affordability issues. Behind the statistics are real people navigating Pittsburgh's housing landscape. 4. St. Louis, Missouri, the hidden real estate labyrinth. Picture this: a city of archways, riverfront views, and Victorian-era brick streets, where history whispers from every corner but the present hums, with bargains few outsiders notice. St. Louis, Missouri often sits in the shadow of its own reputation. Crime statistics, economic headlines, and decades-old industrial decline paint one story. But dig a little deeper, and you uncover a hidden narrative. Neighborhoods where the median home price can be as low as $95,000. Yes, under 6 figures in a major U.S. city. Walking down certain blocks, you'll see freshly renovated homes standing proudly next to vacant lots, boarded-up windows, and streets lined with overgrown grass. There's a resilience here, a pulse of life that refuses to be erased. Residents you meet on these streets have a quiet pride, neighbors painting porches, kids riding bikes past chain-link fences, grandmothers waving from stoops. Redditors call it a city of contrasts, the serenity of your dream home colliding with the reality of an abandoned house next door. Median home price: around $95,000 to $125,000 in many neighborhoods. Cost of living: roughly 16% below the national average. Crime index: higher than the national median, but concentrated in specific zones, meaning location is everything. South City and Tower Grove South offer historic charm, walkable streets, and revitalized local businesses. Buy smart, and your $100,000 investment could be the start of generational wealth. Utilities, property taxes, and maintenance often bite harder than the sticker price suggests. A $95,000 home can still carry hidden expenses that make budgeting tricky. 3. Toledo, Ohio, the Glass City's hidden opportunities. Picture a city with shimmering waterways, historic neighborhoods, and an industrial past that stretches back generations. That's Toledo, known as the Glass City for its century-old glass-making industry. It's easy to dismiss it as just another post-industrial Rust Belt town, but scratch the surface, and Toledo is quietly intriguing. With a median home price hovering around $120,000, Toledo offers a rare slice of affordable American city life. But affordability here isn't just about cost. It's about space, community, and potential. From revitalized downtown districts to lakeside escapes on Lake Erie, the city's charm often goes unnoticed. Pros: affordable housing, plenty of single-family homes for first-time buyers. Waterfront access, Lake Erie and Maumee River provide recreation, sunsets, and serenity. Cultural roots: Toledo Museum of Art, the historic Toledo Zoo, and annual festivals keep the city alive. Cons: economic struggles. Certain neighborhoods still grapple with unemployment and aging infrastructure. Crime hotspots. Like many post-industrial cities, safety varies greatly by area. Brain drain: young talent often leaves for bigger metros, though some are returning to invest in local startups. 2. Cleveland suburbs and city fringe. Affordable living at the edge of opportunity. Cleveland often gets dismissed as just another Rust Belt city, but take a closer look, especially at its fringe neighborhoods and surrounding suburbs, and a different story emerges, one of low-cost housing, community grit, and untapped potential. Cleveland proper has a median home price around $70,000, but once you slide into suburbs like Parma, Euclid, or Maple Heights, prices stay shockingly low relative to national averages, often $100,000 or less for a decent single-family home. Yet you're not just buying a house, you're buying access to Lake Erie, suburban schools, and a city fringe that's quietly stabilizing after decades of decline. Pros: ultra-affordable homes. From charming bungalows to roomy mid-century homes, the prices make coastal markets look insane. Proximity to the city, work, culture, and entertainment are just a short drive away. Revitalization pockets. Certain neighborhoods are seeing subtle gentrification, art projects, and community investment. Cons. Crime can spike in certain areas. The farther you are from the well-off suburbs, the higher the risk. Economic unevenness. Job opportunities aren't evenly distributed. Some fringe suburbs are still struggling. Aging infrastructure, roads, utilities, and public spaces sometimes reflect decades of deferred maintenance. 1. Pittsburgh fringe and small boroughs. Rust Belt charm with surprising opportunity. When people think of Pittsburgh, images of steel mills, bridges, and foggy river valleys come to mind. But step just outside the city limits into the small boroughs and suburban fringe like Mount Lebanon, McKees Rocks, and Oakmont, and a very different story emerges. One of affordable homes, tight-knit communities, and an unexpected sense of possibility. Why this region stands out? Median home prices in Pittsburgh proper hover around $150,000 to $200,000. But in some surrounding boroughs, you can snag a single-family home for under $120,000. That's not just cheap. That's buying into a community with history, charm, and access to the city's amenities without the urban hassle. Pros. Community feel. Residents often know each other by name. Kids ride bikes safely. Neighbors watch out for one another. Affordability meets accessibility. Close enough to Pittsburgh's job market, universities, and hospitals, yet distant enough to avoid the congestion and high taxes. Historic homes and unique architecture, brick row houses, old Victorian gems, and quirky mid-century builds abound. Cons. Aging infrastructure. Bridges, roads, and utilities can show their age. Maintenance varies widely by borough. Economic unevenness. Not every fringe town is thriving. Some are still grappling with industrial decline. Limited entertainment options. Smaller boroughs offer charm, not nightlife. You'll need to drive into the city for a real scene. Picture a crisp fall afternoon. The smell of wood smoke drifts from chimneys. Kids kick a soccer ball down quiet streets, and the distant steel bridges of Pittsburgh glimmer in the sunset. The fringe boroughs are both echoes of a storied past and canvases for a future no one expects. But the real question is, will you see these towns as mere leftovers of the Rust Belt, or as the secret opportunity the smart few are quietly snatching up?